I'm Champaign native Emily Harrington. You're watching the podcast where townies and transplants share their tales of tears and triumphs, losses and wins, proving week after week that everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to HyperLocals. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the next episode of the HyperLocals podcast. I'm getting a 2-for-1, which is very exciting. Lots of times I have guests on and they go home and then they sleep on it and then they contact me wanting to change or add. They've really reflected on what they have said. Most of the time it's a beautiful wrapped up story, but this one's kind of close to my heart. So I thought it definitely deserved a part 2. And so we have Jay Ramshaw back to discuss the kind of the adulthood part of your story.
The adulthood and kind of some of the pain and struggles that kind of went into getting into rehab. I know that we focused on, particular instances in the last podcast, but, some of what we missed out on was just, being so sick and tired of being sick and tired, mm-hmm. and knowing that something needed to be changed, but not knowing how to do it. And I didn't want, to leave the last podcast where, to me personally, it came off as, he figured out he had a problem. He went to rehab and then life was grand. And,
right.
And I don't, life's not easy, and life is especially not easy, going through addiction, getting sober, and then in adulthood with relationships and children and everything else.
When you went home after that interview, what was your main concern with what you put out and left on the table?
I think my main concern was that I believe that the emotional toll aspect wasn't told.
Okay.
It was, we had, I think, 40, 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And we hit the high notes
sure.
of my issues, but just in thinking back of the times, especially, in college and in practices, and, waking up with a horrendous hangover and swearing to yourself, I'm not going to do this again. I can't do this again. And going to lift, trying to make it to class, going to practice, and then about, 3:30, 4, you're at practice, you start feeling good, and all of a sudden, you're doing exactly what you said you didn't want to do again, mm-hmm. and you don't know how you got into this situation, and it repeats, and you're drinking because you're unhappy because you're drinking, and you can't get off of this merry-go-round that is just miserable, and it's ruining your life, but you can't get off.
You can't get off because it just won't get out of your head.
It not necessarily won't get out of your head, but it's...
Describe it to me.
The best way I can... Well, now that you say that, one thing that I have brought up is what's amazing in how powerful this disease is. I can remember being in the middle of a game, especially in high school, being in the huddle, and thinking about what alcohol or booze that we were going to get after the game, and trying to figure that out, and then hear the play, and then go and play.
Okay.
And so it has an incredible pull, with your thoughts, and during active addiction, it really affects all of the decisions that you make, mm-hmm. on where you're going, who you're hanging out with. How much do you have? Do you have enough?
Right. How are we going to get it?
You need to get to the liquor store before it closes.
I don't think, did you end up playing ball the whole time? Football?
Yeah. So I ended up playing until 2007.
Okay.
Was when I was done, graduating in 2008.
Okay. So 1 year in active addiction, 3 years playing ball.
Yeah. And then I was done. So they went to the Rose Bowl the year after I was done.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
How did your game, as a teammate, how were you the first year versus the last 3?
It's interesting to think. I was a better teammate. Certainly more responsible in terms of being on practice on time, and understanding the playbook and being responsible to my teammates. But what's fascinating is when you look, when I look back is when Zook came in. Zook was on a no huddle offense, and I got switched to tight end, and so they would do hand signals from the sideline.
Okay.
And I still have ADD, and I did not start taking medication until my senior year of college. And when I look back and trying to understand and decipher the signals from the sideline was almost an impossibility. I did fine understanding the plays when we would get in the huddle, but when it was live and hand signals were coming from the sidelines, it was blank upstairs. It was a real struggle. On top of it, so was school. But and what was incredible was once I actually, finally got medicated, it was like the lights went on.
Really?
Yes.
Jeez.
My GPA went. It was almost straight A's my last year.
Does that bum you out thinking about all that time you could have been?
It could, but I've talked to my wife about this. I am a huge believer in things happen the way that they're supposed to happen, and had I had a lot of success playing football, I wouldn't have the wife, the kids, or anybody that I had today. I mean, everything happened the way that it was supposed to. Whether or not it was how I liked it to happen is irrelevant. And so, I don't have any regrets in terms of that standpoint, because part of in the program, being spiritual and taking. Getting myself out of the way, and it's God's will, and that's what was supposed to happen is kind of where I'm at, and it's been kind of my journey.
Has your personality changed from a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old Jay to the Jay now?
Oh, I would say substantially.
Okay.
I mean, I was a very, very arrogant, very cocky, and I think some of that was probably because I didn't think much of myself, but I certainly came off as though that I did.
Interesting.
I was incredibly more talk. I could talk to people. I could have conversations that I normally wouldn't have. I thought, with a little booze, that I could kind of become the life of the party. In fact, I was voted life of the party
in high school.
Which is no surprise, because.
And we take so much pride in that then. You know what I mean?
I'd hate to look back and count the individuals that have been named that have ended up in treatment or rehab.
Exactly, yeah.
And part of it is culturally, and in that time, is you kind of just thought that's what, high school was like. It was, as we talked earlier, it was pretty normal for that to happen in 2002, 2003. And Varsity Blues was just, you didn't think that we were doing anything wrong. Occasionally it got out of hand, but and then when I drank too much, and I would say things that I would never say to somebody when I was sober, and do things that I would never do, and then you wake up the next morning and you have this horrendous hangover, not only from the booze, but just regret in how you acted towards somebody. And I was not brought up that way. I knew how to treat people and to treat people with respect, and so it was a constant battle. And in one definition I like of an alcoholic is continuing to violate your personal morals despite repeated consequences.
Okay, explain that to me. Like I'm a kindergartner. Explain.
So I mean, okay, but as a kindergartner, continuing to do, to touch a hot stove, it's not morale, despite being burnt every time that you do it, is the same as treating people disrespectful, and continuing to have the moral hangover, and just the disgust with yourself every time that you do it, but you continue to.
Did you feel the disgust until you drank again? Is that what eliminated it till the next time? Or do you live with it through the day?
Oh, I think it would. It's one of those things that, yeah, it lives with you. It pops in and out until you do something about it.
Yeah.
And where you apologize and have to take ownership of being a kind of a wild party guy. And then it gets to the point where, oh, that's just Jay. Well, no, just because somebody is a big party or a drinker, it doesn't make it okay for them to be a loud, obnoxious jerk either.
Sure. We'll take a quick break, and I want to come back and talk about amends and apologies. And we are back. Okay. Before I get off track, because a bunch of questions have come to me, I want to talk about amends and apologies. You go out repeatedly, you make mistakes, you wake up thinking about them, sweat and regret. Then how do you recover in terms of, do you have to do you do an apology to her every morning? How do you make amends as a non-sober person?
I don't think you do. It's like a snowball. It just kind of builds up, and then these things that you're not proud of, yeah, they build up, and your snowball gets bigger, and then every time you look in the mirror, you kind of like yourself, even less. And if I made an amends, it was either probably because I wanted something from you, I was probably drinking, and I had enough courage to make the amends. Not to say that it wasn't genuine at the time, but certainly an apology coming from somebody that is sober is a lot more meaningful than somebody that's hammered in a bar apologizing for being a jerk the night before.
Okay. You described yourself as confident, gregarious, outgoing, life of the party. So is that all false? Because you are that way today.
I would say that I'm an extrovert introvert.
Okay.
I enjoy going out and being social, not nearly as much as I did. I certainly enjoyed being social in college, and I think some of that comes with time and getting older and age.
For sure.
A perfect day for me is being at my house and mowing my lawn, and being with my kids, and I don't. Some social situations wear me out today.
Yes. I would agree with that. You described yourself as unhappy then, sick and tired of being sick and tired. Today, how would you describe your mental health state?
I think it's very healthy today, and I think part of that is when we were talking, when you look back and you're getting sober at 20, and understanding the principles of the program and understanding life, it's entirely different than when you're 40 years old, and at 40 being able to draw on 20 years of life experience and seeing how certain decisions that you made in your life kind of cascade and have this ripple effect, and being able to apply the program to your life and to your relationships, and watching the fruit of that developing, it's entirely different. In having a track record of making relatively good decisions for a long period of time, and not being derailed by some chaotic alcoholic activity, because it was always 3 steps forward, 4 steps back. You never could have any momentum because there was always another shoe was dropping because you had done something stupid.
But we talked about this before. You're an anomaly. 1, because of how young you were when you got into recovery, and 2, you didn't relapse, and 3, you didn't use, nothing else became manifested in terms of addiction. Usually they supplement something else with something.
Well, I mean,
you know what I mean?
I get what you mean. And to say that, I think there's been other things that have come up throughout the years, and some of that, food certainly was one. I mean,
Interesting.
I got incredibly, heavy for a while. Relationships with women. There's been things that have popped up, but
Okay.
have not been as life affecting as alcohol. And still to this day, I have to be aware of, what I'm doing, because my alcoholic behavior pops up all the time. I mean, I went out and was buying grass seed and I bought 400 pounds of grass seed.
Okay.
I get obsessive. I get laser focused on things and I have to watch myself.
Okay. So when you buy the 400 pounds of grass seed, are you realizing that this is the disease talking?
It's
in some way?
More's got to be better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If 300 pounds was recommended, well, 400's got to be even better.
Wow. Okay.
And that's with a lot.
Okay. That's with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. But you can see that.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That's not, I wouldn't go out and buy 400 pounds. Like, you recognize that in yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. When you went through treatment, the principal at the recovery center is AA.
Correct.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about that, about the anonymous part of that, because I have interviewed a lot of people and they struggle with what they can and cannot say. Do you think being anonymous, keeping anonymity is important, or does that hinder the exposure?
I think for the people, because they say the program is attraction, not promotion, and I think for the individuals that that are in the room, I certainly don't believe that you should mention anybody that you see in the rooms. I mean, it's kind of a secret society.
Yeah.
And when you're inside the room and you see people inside the room, I do not think that you should certainly out anybody out in the community. But if somebody wants to be known as a person in recovery outside the community, and they're in the program, I don't see an issue with that, because it's completely different today with podcasts and media, and putting this out there. You don't know who it might help, and that person could glob onto something and see you and just ask for help. And I think that's the most important thing is when somebody is struggling and they need help, always being available to be there for them, because I can go back to the absolute hopeless state that I was in and wanting help, and being able to go to somebody would be incredibly comforting and helpful.
The idea of sponsorship, being a sponsor and taking a sponsor. Are you a sponsor to anyone?
I'm not.
Have you ever?
I have.
Okay, and how is that experience? Because you kind of mentioned that you went from being helpless to helping others.
It's
challenging.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in what is it, F around and find out sort of a person. It can be rewarding.
Disappointing too, though. That's hard.
It is disappointing watching somebody go back out and knowing you can kind of plan it out.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, if they're coming in the doors and you've heard their story and they have a problem and they decide, you know what, I think I'm going to give this another run. Give it a whirl. Hey, let me know how it goes. I'm available when you get back. But you can. This is how this will play out.
Then why didn't it play out like that for you? What's special about you that it took one time?
Well, I don't think there's anything special about me. Quite frankly, I did not want to feel like I felt anymore.
Okay.
And I constantly think about it, and I'm playing the whole tape through, even at the amount of time that I have, which I'll say real quickly, a lot of people put a significance on time in the program, but what we have to remember is really all you have is today. And so, a big concentration of mine is, what is the quality of your life in sobriety, today. And if you stack those up and you get some time together, but, it's one thing that I have noticed is where people get overly concerned with how much time they have when, if you were to tell somebody, hey, you had 10 years, you relapsed for a week, and then you had another 10 years or another 5 years. Well, you had almost 15 years of a much better life than what you would have had.
Okay.
And so, I just, because I've seen people with 20 years go out. I had a sponsor that had 20 years that went out and never came back.
Wow.
Ever. It was incredibly sad watching his demise in not being able to get back. And I certainly never want to hold myself up on any sort of pedestal or being special. And I think a lot of it is getting out of yourself and helping other people. And that gives you an opportunity to go and remember what it was like. We were talking before the podcast, and we could talk about this after the break if you want, about the recovery brunch that Rosecrans hosts, every quarter.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about that when we come back. Okay. I want to go back to where we were. You talk a lot about helping others. And one of your philanthropies, so to speak, today is involved with Rosecrans.
Correct.
Okay, so tell me about that role and then the brunches that come up periodically.
So I'm on both boards. I'm on the executive one out of Chicago, which is all kind of business related, and then on the regional board here in town, it's centrally located, and that is kind of more hands-on. But one thing that I thought was important for our board to understand and to feel was, and to see were the patients that we were helping, that we were making decisions about, that we were helping. And so we decided to have kind of a recovery brunch, and I told this past week, and selfishly, I wanted to do it because, very rarely can you get a whole group of people that are in inpatient treatment together, bring people in, from the recovery community, have breakfast. We have kind of a first step meeting where people tell their story, and that is it's an incredibly good reminder for me to see people that may have a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and also for the individuals in treatment to see people in the recovery community that have had success in what worked for them, because it's addiction and alcoholism. It doesn't discriminate at all.
No.
It doesn't matter.
It's incredible.
And so I love seeing people get together, and when you look at somebody and they share their story, and it boggles your mind of the pain and struggle and it gives me the ability to be have so much gratitude for the fact that I was able to go to treatment early, because you hear these stories about people that lost their wife, their children, their house. I mean, there's a lot to lose, and having not had to go through that, but imagining, like, God forbid you go back out. I mean, the amount of meaningful things in my life today that are at risk versus 19,
Yeah.
it doesn't even compare.
Sure.
There's 3 kids at home that count on me, a wife, and that is, you talk about motivation.
Yeah.
It's and that's why you look and why sobriety is so important, because there's mouths and people that actually depend on you today.
Every day, when you wake up, do you have to think about sobriety, your sobriety?
I mean, I think about sobriety. I do not think about not drinking today. I think about, how I'm going to, kind of traverse, my world, in a good, positive, spiritual, principled way, but not like okay, today's another day that I don't get to drink. That I don't.
You're past that.
I've been past that for a long time.
How long do you think it took to get there?
I recall it was probably, I may have been sober a year and a half, and it was I was thinking about this morning driving in. It's typically like in the fall, like where it's a little the leaves are changing.
Tailgating season.
Afternoon, and more of like, not like a party, but more of like an idle Wednesday afternoon. But like, man, it would be kind of nice.
Yeah.
But it's nothing that, like, certainly not obsessive thoughts or anything. Because again, I can tell you where that goes really quickly.
The things that would have led you to drink back in the day, which seemed like problems, stresses, do you have coping mechanisms to handle things now that you didn't then?
It's interesting you asked that, because like my problems then are entirely different than my problems today.
Yeah.
What seemed like a problem when you're 17 or 8,
sure,
it doesn't even register today. And yeah, there's tons of tools that you learn, and really most of it boils down to communication, and it's something that I still need to work on today, and I think my wife would completely agree with that. And just thinking about the times, are you just not going to say anything? Okay, well, now that you mentioned it, maybe I will.
So there's still work to be done.
I am nowhere near a finished product. I have flaws beyond flaws.
I want to talk about, we'll get to your family life and how that evolved, but before we move on from AA and that time, the making amends step in AA, what was that like for you?
It's hard.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, you have to, it's hard. It's incredibly rewarding. Some people didn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
There was one of my first amends was to one of my best friend's dads. We had a party at their house, and we had a radio in the window in their kitchen, and I wanted the radio off, and I thought a good way to turn the radio off was to throw a 2-liter bottle. Well, the bottle went through the window, and
oh shit.
I never offered to pay for it or fix it. Or the good news is that he's in sobriety and had been sober, so he
understood.
He completely understood, especially when I came to apologize.
So you did that face to face.
Yeah.
You went and apologized.
Yeah.
And that was one of your first amends that came to you.
It was, I'll be honest, partially because, he was in the program, and so it certainly made it
easier.
Yeah, made it easier. But and there's been, amends for lying and just it's not easy, but it's incredibly gratifying. And as an older adult, it kind of makes you think that hey, you're gonna have to make amends for this. Gives you pause to think.
Sure.
And if you don't, it kind of just sits inside your head, and it'll come up, when you least expect it, and then and really the only way to get rid of it is to go and make amends for it.
Are amends ongoing?
Yes.
Okay. So that's not one complete buttoned up step and you move forward.
Not unless you're Mother Teresa. Because
okay.
You continue to hopefully you kind of have a big one there at the beginning where you look back and activate addiction, but as you move forward in the program, it's something that you do on a daily, weekly basis, and they're easier to make because they're certainly not as bad.
Sure.
Or you hope that they're not as bad.
Sure.
And they shouldn't be as bad as you practice the principles of the program.
Okay, so your life is obviously different with 3 kids and a wife. Let's talk about dating sober versus dating drinking, and how you came to meet your wife, and how does she learn about your past addictions?
So the good thing is I was very open about the fact that I didn't drink.
Okay.
And when I had made that decision in college, it wasn't something I wanted to hide anymore. I was completely wide open with it. And when I found out that it wasn't really that big of a deal at all, people did not look at me like I was some, monster or like what could possibly weirdo. What could possibly be wrong with them? That certainly helped, my self-confidence. And you find out that people have an element of respect for the fact that you quit. It makes it much, much easier to be forthcoming in the fact that you don't drink. And as I mentioned last time, I think, dating is different. Things that you could say under the influence and, kind of have some plausible deniability.
Sure. Your inhibitions.
Your inhibitions are much lower. And so, you're certainly not going out and having a ton of one-night stands and making bad decisions. I'd like to think that, your relationships are a little bit more meaningful because you have to kind of get below the surface level. But it wasn't easy. I mean, they were all meaningful. In my wife's case, she is not a big drinker by any means. We were just having this conversation. We were in Michigan recently, and the waiter asked if she wanted an 8 or 12-ounce glass of wine. She ordered 8, and I shook my head. I go, it makes no sense to me, and then didn't finish it. But
it's hard for you to understand that someone couldn't finish.
It doesn't really. Why have 6 ounces? Like, why? I mean, why? It doesn't, what does that do for you?
Yeah.
But, Lauren's not a drinker. And her and I have talked about this, and just the amount of time that I have available, to the family and kids is entirely different than if I was either, an active alcoholic or a heavy drinker at this point in my life.
Okay, so when we get back, I wanted to talk about if you ever could see yourself dating someone around that time that was a big drinker. So we'll talk about that when we get back. We are back. Okay, before I lose my train of thought, could you ever have dated anyone in those early years that was a big drinker?
No. Cause it's like when you're a big drinker, you want to hang out with other people that are big drinkers, and when you're, in sobriety, you certainly want to hang out with people that, you can converse with on a nightly basis. Because, I mean, that's as you get older, and and you're at these parties, and you quickly realize that there comes a certain time where nobody really knows what's going on, and I just exit. I don't say goodbye to anybody, and no one knows that you did that. I mean, I'm famous for just
Irish goodbye.
See ya.
It's amazing the perspective you take now at a social gathering, seeing other adults.
Yeah,
you look at people different. I mean, it's just so much more apparent.
It is apparent, and you remember most of it.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you could be a little of a pariah because, he's not great, and he, remembers and sees, and, occasionally I'll bring up some things, hey, do you remember doing this?
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Drinkers want to be around other drinkers.
Yeah.
So all that to say, that was a quality that you looked for in a partner, is a management of it.
Yeah, just somebody that wasn't abusive. I certainly wasn't looking for a stone cold sober individual, and that's it's not their disease, it's not their problem, and so I never wanted anybody to think that if we're dating, you have to quit drinking.
Sure.
It's not your problem at all. It's mine.
Okay. Kids. We've talked about there's a genetic component, obviously, to alcoholism. How do you deal with that in your own life with 3 kids, one set of twins?
And Lauren and I have talked about this, and I think being incredibly transparent and open with them about the genetic component, about the the disease component of it, and I'm hoping that the fact that there is no part of our family lifestyle that centers around alcohol, that might have an effect on them in setting the right example for them. Lauren and I have talked. What if one of them ends up having a problem, and it's a double-edged sword for me, because I understand there is a benefit to having to go through the struggle and having to go to treatment and learn about yourself, and you get this alternative education in life that you wouldn't have gotten, but there is also a lot of heartache and struggle to go through that. And so, obviously I hope that none of them have to go through that, but God willing, if they do, I think that hopefully we'll be able to notice it sooner rather than later. And it's not having gone through it, it's not a big deal. To a lot of, families or I don't want to, cast a broad brush, but, when you say that somebody has to go to rehab, it's a big, that's a big deal. I mean, all right, well, let's pack our bags.
Okay.
You're headed to treatment.
Okay.
It's so ingrained in our
It wouldn't be devastating to you.
Not in the least bit.
Not in the least bit.
No. I mean, because it's not their fault.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not their fault.
No, it's not something we did as parents. It's a genetic component that they happen to experiment with alcohol, and guess what? You're the winner. You got it.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
let's go take care of it before it gets out of hand.
Will you intervene early then, knowing what you know?
Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah, I will. I would intervene in terms of talking and telling them my story and kind of where this goes. I would certainly try to get them in treatment in hopes that even if they weren't knocking down the door to go, but hopes that if they got there, they could kind of see where their life is going to go if they don't take care of it. And I think that's kind of where I was at. Ultimately, but like with anybody, it's going to be their choice and their choosing. And I hope, just like with anybody, you don't have to just, reach completely rock bottom, sleeping outside and under a bridge, and before you raise your hand and say that you need help.
At what point, when you're on your way to Minnesota, when you're in Minnesota, when you're on your way back, do you completely buy into this idea and system and not think you're going through the motions?
Well, when you were asking that question, it made me. I remember when we pulled up. I think I looked at my mom and dad and said,
I don't want to do this.
I was like, I'm probably good. Because I think we were driving. I was like, I don't know if we need to go through this whole thing. I'm probably good. But there was. It was like, I think it was like 10 days in, is when I really accepted the fact that and believed it that I was an alcoholic and that I am here to get better. Yeah, I remember being in the shower one morning and being like, all right, this is real.
Really?
Yeah. There was always some lead up to that where you were almost there, but like kind of surrender and win.
Okay.
Like, all right, this is the deal.
Yeah.
It needs to stop, and let's play this out and see what it looks like.
Were you able to communicate with your parents throughout that process, or anyone for that matter?
Yeah, it was a little different then because they had like a phone bank. They didn't allow cell phones in treatment. You could only talk kind of in the evenings. Yeah, so there was some calls home. Both grandmothers would write me letters. Oh. I still have everything I got in treatment still, and then I didn't really communicate with like friends and everybody back at home. I didn't, I'm in treatment. You're in college. We don't have a lot in common right now.
So how was that transition then when you came home? Hey, I'm different now.
Well, it was no surprise that I went to treatment and that I had a problem. And like I said, being open and transparent about it. There was The only people that had an issue with it were the individuals that, and it was a very, very small group that I drank with every day, and I think that caused maybe them to look at themselves and, well, if he's got a problem, I might have a problem. But other than that, the support that my friends, my teammates gave me was incredible.
Okay.
Really, nobody was oh, you're not out. You can come out and drink. Everybody was incredibly supportive of staying sober.
I can imagine your parents, I mean, they were so relieved. They had to be so relieved.
I think I don't want to speak for them, but they were probably relieved and scared and uncertain all at the same time.
Like, when's the shoe gonna drop?
Yeah, because they had been so used to just things being good for a little bit, and then all of a sudden something happens, and I think that takes probably a long time to get over. Especially in a big family, there's always stuff going on. But yeah, there was probably relief just me being in treatment.
Yeah, safe.
Once you're released, like, okay, let's see where this goes. But no, my parents, they were incredibly supportive, and they helped tremendously. I did not live on campus while I was in college. So
you didn't?
No, I didn't. I lived off campus. And my parents, they got me a condo off campus, and so that's where I had kind of a safe area to go to at night. Because if I was out on campus and with friends, I always had a place to go back to where it was mine. I did not have other influences or roommates coming in drunk or hanging out. I had a safe space.
So freshman year, you lived in housing.
I lived in Hopkins 369 with a lifelong friend.
Oh, really?
I went to preschool, kindergarten, grade school, high school, and we were college roommates together.
Okay, so obviously this person understood your struggle in recovery.
Yes.
Okay. So you have a safe haven. Is this isolating for you? Did you ever feel that way?
No, because I could drive. And so I could drive to campus, I could be with my buddies, I could go out, but I could drive home.
Okay.
And so that took care of the isolation.
I want to talk about how you become, and someone that we mutually know, almost the unspoken DD. You're the Superman on campus, so to speak. Saving people that need your help. And we will talk about that when we come back. Okay, we are back. I have a friend that I see every Monday, and she always asks who I've interviewed. So I told her that I had interviewed you and that you were going to come back for a part 2. And then she says, I think he saved my life. He may have saved my life one night. And she tells me the story about you were driving around on campus, going from A to B. She went to a party. She doesn't remember anything. And the next afternoon, she woke up. So you got her home safe, is all this to say. So did that become your MO?
I don't know if it was an MO, but it was certainly my way of kind of giving back to friends, that I had that had to deal with my shenanigans years prior, especially teammates, and making sure that we could all go out, we could have fun, we didn't have to walk, because at times some people would choose to drive after drinking.
Yes, it was common. It was normal.
It was you don't have to just get in. You don't have to do that anymore. Or if we went out and wanted food or something else, well, no one was at risk. I could go and get it, and that was kind of my the least I could do for my friends and teammates. When I got out of treatment, I guess call it I'm making myself useful. I might not be as fun as I once was, but he's sober and can get you around.
Did you ever feel seriously think of yourself, God, I'm not as fun as I used to be?
Oh, I'm sure there was probably times, but I was only fun for a couple hours.
And then they turned a corner.
Yeah, and then I became that person you didn't want to be around, and that and I was in probably reflecting on it. I probably thought I was a lot more fun than I really was. So there's that too.
Were people that maybe see you annually that were shocked at the change in you? one Thanksgiving break, I see one Jay, and then the next year, totally different guy.
I think the interesting thing is so when I think about that question is the people that I knew then, a lot of them, knew me growing up too, and knew me before I even drank, and so I think in thinking back to, because I still have a lot of friends that I went to grade school with, they're probably more like relieved that okay, well now he's back to how we knew him before he had this false sense of bravado and personality and everything that he wasn't. Yeah.
Before we end this conversation, this part 2, I wanted to make sure that I've covered everything that you want to get through. So I'm going to read the text that you sent me shortly after our part 1. I think a part 2 could be really impactful. There's so much more to share about long-term recovery, what life looks 20 years in, how the promises of the program actually can come true, and what ongoing growth really feels like. I never want people to think it's just go to treatment and voila, you're fixed. There's a lot of real work and real reward on the other side of it. I especially don't want to discount the folks that are out there doing the work but just can't string some meaningful time together.
Yeah.
So that's what you text me. Is there anything in there you want to go in a little bit deeper with?
I think the biggest thing is in reflecting and the life that I have today and the relationships that I have today and my children and all of that is because I decided to get sober early.
Yeah.
And I maintain all that because on a daily basis I decide I'm not going to drink today.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really still today one drink away from losing all that. And never wanting to lose, I don't want to lose sight of that, and I don't ever want to think that at X amount of years I got this, because it can't happen. It can't happen that fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell you this, that if it did happen, I would probably ride it till the wheels fell off, because it would be,
you'd go down in a blaze of glory.
it'd be terrible.
Yeah.
It really would. It would be so hard to come back from that. I hope that's not the case, but if history is any indication. And so, in thinking about people that are thinking about getting sober, that think they may have an issue, the program works, sobriety works, and it's hard to fathom when you're just starting out that life can get better, but it does, and there's no downside in not drinking. There really isn't. You cannot convince me otherwise that there's any, especially today, health, wellness, your mental clarity, and the impact that it has on your relationships with people, because the friends that I have today and the relationships that I have today are, it isn't Mo, next to the bar seat, where we're just talking about, they're very genuine, relationships. And furthermore, the program gives you an opportunity to get outside of yourself and to help other people. And, I've taken, people to treatment on New Year's Eve up in Minnesota and watched them, stay sober. And, this one individual, he's a family member of mine, and to see.
I think I've interviewed him.
I think I think you have, and I have an incredible, because taking him was not a big deal. And so when he got out of the car, we were in front of Hazelden. I turned around with my camera and I said, "Hey, say rehab," and I took a picture of him. And occasionally I will send that back to him, because I remember what space he was in, and to see where he's at today, he's done such a phenomenal job, and that is, it's so rewarding for me to watch, him, get his life together, and it's incredibly meaningful, the conversations that him and I can have, that no one, else understands unless you're in, unless you've gone through that kind of struggle. It's a unique club that you don't want to belong to.
Yeah.
But if you get a membership, it's pretty special because the people in the program they're some of the most, selfless, caring, empathetic people you'll ever meet in your life, and from all walks of life.
That's what's so interesting. It affects everyone at every level.
Yeah.
Where do you recommend people start if they think they have a problem or questioning?
Hopefully they know somebody that has gone through it that is kind of an example of recovery. I get hesitant saying, hop on the internet or hop on ChatGPT because who knows what you're going to find there. But if there's somebody that is an example of what sobriety looks like, asking them because they completely know to their core what you're going through and can talk to you, and within a couple minutes you will know this person gets it. This person understands.
And most people are never just like you took the person on New Year's or whatever, you're never going to turn down helping someone or advising someone or pointing someone in the right direction.
I would never turn anybody down. What I don't do is when I have friends that I can see, have an issue, I do not.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
I don't come at them at all. I have a buddy that recently, got sober. He's coming up on a year. Him and I are very close, and just being there in support, and he knew that when he was ready, I was ready. But there is no judgment from me. I was you. I get exactly what you're going through.
Okay, that's so interesting. Okay, well, you're the man to talk to, I would say.
I am one of many.
You're one of many. Jay, anything else? Do you feel good are you going to walk away feeling good about this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
You are well-spoken, and I'm thrilled with how far you have come. And it's wonderful. It's a great story.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this week's HyperLocal show. If you like what you hear or you need anything from me, let me know at hyperlocalscu.com. Also, search and follow HyperLocalsCU on all social media. Like me, follow me. Bye.